Hey, this is Ciderhelm. In this video I'm going to be covering the passive and active skills for the Wizard. The Wizard is this is a final class passive and active skill video that I'm going to be doing. I've done each of the other ones at this point. Now the Wizard, the resource bar, just so you're aware, is Arcane Power in the bottom right side, a fast regenerating resource used for the Wizard's offensive spells. So that's the main thing that we're going to be using, and there are going to be a few skills that involve it. In fact, there's one very early on, which is our very first, which will actually recover some every time we use the health globe. Okay, before going any further, before going into the actual skills, let's go ahead and cover how the skills work. So if you haven't watched any of the other videos, this is going to be news to you. Passive skills. You can have 3 passive skills available to you at any given time. However, each slot that you have, they unlock every 10 levels. So at level 10, you have your first one. Level 20, you have your second one. Level 30, you have your third one. So you can have up to 3 by the time you're level 30, and you can just switch them in and out. And what I mean by switching them in and out is you're not making a permanent decision here. So right now, say I have Power Hungry selected, but I can just pick Temporal Flux. These are the 2 available to me right now. And anytime that I want to, I can just immediately go in here and switch it. I'm not making a permanent decision. Now this may change, but right now in the beta, you can easily switch between stuff. The same is true for active skills. Okay. So you can have up to 3, but you get your first one at level 10. I've leveled this character up to level 10, and let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about what the passives offer us. The first one is Power Hungry. Gain 30 arcane power whenever you are healed by a health globe. So right now I have 103 arcane power. Health globes are common. This means that anytime that I hit one of these health globes, or somebody near me hits one of these health globes and I'm affected by it, I'm going to gain 30 energy back, or 30 arcane power back. Okay, so let's say Shock Pulse here is, well, let's see, Electrocute. You can see that I can quickly spam and run out here. Run all the way out, but if I'm getting health globes, which again, they are pretty common from groups of mobs, they can drop from almost anything, or anything that I'm aware of. They're pretty common. You would get mana back. I don't think it'd be too often that you would actually be getting enough mana back to sustain this, but it will help depending on the situations you're in. Okay, Temporal Flux. Whenever you deal arcane damage, enemies are slowed by 24% for 2 seconds. So this is just a slow that activates when you're dealing arcane damage. I'll give you a couple examples here. In the active skills, the 2 that I've used, Magic Missile, launch a missile of magic energy causing 14 to 18 arcane damage. So that's arcane damage. Arcane Orb, 35 arcane power. Heal an orb, or hurl an orb of pure energy that explodes when it hits, dealing 15 to 26 arcane damage to all enemies within 15 yards. However, you're not primarily, like, for instance, Electrocute here is lightning damage. Shock Pulse is lightning damage. As I've played through, I have found Shock Pulse and Electrocute to be about 10 times more fun than Magic Missile, and I haven't even used Arcane Orb very much just because Electrocute and Shock Pulse are so effective at what they do. So anyway, that's the second passive there. Let's get back into the passives. Glass Cannon increases all damage done by 20%, but decreases armor and resistances by 10%. This is interesting because you get a penalty for using this, and you get that penalty at a very early stage. Now, I believe on the Witch Doctor, and I think it's the Monk. Yeah, it's the Monk and the Witch Doctor. I found passives that are they have penalties attached to them, but usually they're deeper, and usually they're not like this. They're more substantial. Like you lose a cooldown, but it costs X amount, like a substantial amount more energy. As I recall, on the Monk, you got like a 6-second cooldown kick and several other abilities. They lost their cooldown, but you paid 50% more on your energy cost for using them. Now, Glass Cannon here, it increases all damage done by 20%. That's fantastic. If you don't get hit, it's a wonderful bonus. Obviously, that's a decision to be made situationally, depending on how you're playing. Okay, Prodigy. Every time you cast an academic spell, you gain 5 arcane power. The following skills are academic spells: Magic Missile, Shock Pulse, Spectral Blade, Electrocute. So quickly, I'll jump into the active skills and I'll cover these more momentarily after we get through the passives. But these 4 are basically academic spells. They're each labeled it in the yellow flavor text at the bottom. Not flavor text. They're each labeled it in the flavor text at the bottom. But interestingly, they are called Rapid Cast at the top. In truth, all the rapid casts are academic spells. Nothing else in your toolkit is going to be an academic spell. So when it says academic spells, and I'll do this again a little later, it is just referring to the rapid cast spells. Okay, back into the passives here. Virtuoso increases the damage of your basic wand attack by 100%. Successful attacks with a wand generate 15 arcane power and heal you for 1% of your maximum life. Pretty straightforward, but this is going to be, are you using a wand or not? And I'm not sure how the playstyle is going to wrap up for the wizard here, especially in later levels, how much you'll be using that. But there's an option. Astral Presence increases your maximum arcane power by 20 and arcane power regeneration by 2 per second. So again, this is going to come down to, we have 103 right now, we have ways of increasing this, we have ways of recovering this. But the 2 per second, just depending on how fast I'm shooting out, that could have a very substantial income or return on what you're doing. Okay, so Illusionist, whenever you suffer more than 15% of your life in a single hit, the cooldown on your mirror image and teleport abilities is automatically reset. So far, as weak as the wizard has been, this basically for me would mean if I get hit, I get the cooldown reset. Just because I'm pretty weak, and so when I take a hit, it's usually more than 15% of my life. On the other hand, maybe you shouldn't be getting hit at all. It'll just depend on your playstyle, how you're playing, how effective you are, and the situations you're in. Galvanizing Ward increases the duration of your armor spells by 120 seconds. As long as an armor spell is active, you gain 3 life per second. The following skills are improved: Energy Armor, Ice Armor, and Storm Armor. Blur decreases melee damage taken by 20%. Evocation reduces all cooldowns by 20%. These are pretty straightforward passives. They decreases melee damage taken by 20% and they reduces all cooldowns by 20%. The Blur is probably going to make a big deal depending on how you're playing. The wizard does have a few melee range spells, so this would play into that dynamic. Arcane Dynamo. Every time you cast an academic spell, you gain a flash of insight. After 8 flashes of insight, your next non-academic spell deals 50% additional damage. The following skills are academic spells: Magic Missile, Shock Pulse, Spectral Blade, Electrocute. Again, those are the rapid cast spells under active skills. We'll get to those soon. Unstable Anomaly. When reduced below 20% life, release a shockwave that knocks all enemies back. This effect cannot occur more than once every 60 seconds. So this is basically a save. It's going to be passive, so obviously it'll be triggered just automatically. If you're below 20% life, this will probably save your life as long as you didn't take a hit that was like you were at 21% and you took a hit for 22% and you're dead. But if it does land in that 20% window, this will knock everything back. I don't know how it'll affect something like a boss mob. What I will say is my CCs on the Skeleton King did work on other classes. So I don't know if knockbacks will work or not on a boss mob. In some cases it may. Overall, it's going to depend on your playstyle. It's going to depend on, basically, are you really good at staying away, or are you sometimes getting in? Are you playing with other players who can keep things at a distance? Any number of things. Are you using the Templar who's taunting things off you? It just depends on the playstyle, and it depends on which other skills you're using. So let's get into the active skills so we can get a better idea of the class. Magic Missile. So Magic Missile, I just put on my hotbar. I will go ahead and unzoom here. Pretty straightforward, very, very hard, even at an early stage, to run out of arcane power doing this. I can just spam it. Single target, that's all it is, single target damage. There is nothing more to it. Each level, okay, this is an academic spell. Academic spells cost 1 less arcane power every time you gain a level. I don't know if that gets down to a certain level and stops. I just don't know. It would be impossible for me to find that out inside of the beta unless it's already at the cap. Like, it can only go down to 6 arcane power. Or if it goes down to 0, or maybe it returns arcane power to me at some point. I really have no idea. Shock Pulse, 8 arcane power, release a pulse of 3 unpredictable charges of electricity that deal 11 to 23 lightning damage to enemies they hit. Okay, I love this ability. This is one of my stock abilities. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's like the toads from the Witch Doctor, but it's not toads, and toads are pretty cool. It's got some pretty good distance. It will stop on random obstacles, like if I'm shooting it upstairs, if there's anything in here. If I'm shooting it upstairs, for some reason it will just stop. If I'm shooting it near obstacles, it'll do the same thing. So do the toads, obviously. But sometimes when it looks like it should continue traveling, it just doesn't continue traveling. Okay, so our next one here is going to be a Spectral Blade. 10 arcane power, summon a Spectral Blade that strikes all enemies in your path 3 times. causing 35% weapon damage with each hit. Okay, so I really don't... This is where I'm going to kind of give away that I don't know much about these alternative playstyles for the wizard, because I'm not sure how Spectral Blade is supposed to be used, if it is possible to build a wizard that is melee range, that is making use of a weapon, etc. But here's basically what it is. It is short range. I mean, it's not super short range, but it is short range. And look, I don't know if the wizard, if it's a viable and good option to actually become a melee range wizard that is close range at all time. Obviously that there are, like we said in the passive skills, there are a few passive skills that lend themselves toward a melee weapon damage wizard, but I just don't know much about that playstyle. I didn't try it out too much because I did like the range spells. In particular, I liked Electrocute, which is going to be our 4th ability here, our 4th academic spell. Lightning arcs from your fingertips towards an enemy, dealing 1 to 21 lightning damage. The lightning can jump, hitting up to 2 enemies. Damage is reduced by 30% each jump. Okay, so let's go ahead and... We've already got it on our hotbar, and it's on my main thing. This is bread and butter. I've been using it... Oh, good. Perfect. Bread and butter attack. I love it. It's a lot of fun. You can just demolish groups of enemies. Very, very long range. It goes exactly where you want it to. I don't believe that it struggles with... you know, I'm not even going to finish this. Let's see if I can find... Okay, so unlike other projectiles, this one I can actually shoot it through other things to hit my target, and then it'll bounce from there. Now let me just double check that. We should find more mobs here. And we'll find, let's see, one more mob. This is just a wonderful, fun ability. That was actually a perfect opportunity, not knowing that I was going to find that guy to show off Diamond Skin, so I'll explain what just happened there in a moment. Okay, so enough with this. Electrocute, stock ability. What I have found myself doing is using these two in combination with each other. The Electrocute I'm really using a lot more than Shock Pulse, because the Electrocute allows me to kind of keep moving, you know, keep shooting like I would on, say, the Demon Hunter, or like I would on the Witch Doctor, while getting damage in on enemies. But the Shock Pulse, on the other hand, to really get out the damage from Shock Pulse, I have to be standing still, or I have to at least be moving slowly to get the cast in. So I do find myself using Electrocute a whole lot more than Shock Pulse, but definitely using both, depending on the situation. Okay, let's go ahead and go into the offensive skills. Wave of Force, explode a wave of pure energy that repels projectiles and knocks back nearby enemies. This also slows the movement of enemies by 50% and deals 20 to 23 physical damage to them. Pretty straightforward. I haven't wanted to use it too much because of its cooldown and because of the limited number of slots I've had available. So let's go ahead and use it here. Yeah, that's what it is. 15-second cooldown. That's a problem to me, just because 15 seconds, again, limited number of skill slots available to me. As I get more skill slots available to me, I'll probably want it or something else in there. But it certainly has a use. Okay, Arcane Orb. Hurl an orb of arcane energy that explodes when it hits, dealing 15 to 26 arcane damage to all enemies within 10 yards. This is a powerful spell. Also a fantastic way to run out of arcane power. That's really what it comes down to. I used it, I had a lot of fun with it, but ultimately I couldn't sustain it. And again, something like Electrocute, the academic spells, the rapid cast spells, those you can sustain and deal tons of damage with. This one, at this stage in the game, I am not able to sustain it. So I do, again, limited number of skill slots here. I do prefer to keep the other ones on my hotbar instead. Okay. Energy Twister. Now, 11, 12, 14. So 14 is the point at which we couldn't have gotten it in the beta. So we have 3 more abilities that are potentially available in the beta that I haven't tried, unfortunately, but let's go ahead and jump in here. Energy Twister. Unleash a twister of pure energy that deals 4 arcane damage per second to everything caught within it. Disintegrate. Cost 20 arcane power per second. Let me look at this. Okay. Thrust a beam of pure energy forward, dealing 18 to 23 arcane damage per second and disintegrating enemies it kills. So this looks like it's channeled. It looks like Cyclops, Laser Beam, could be incredible. I mean, the animation looks kind of incredible. Somebody's getting shot through with a laser. But okay, so I haven't tried it. This might be something that I get back to and cover in a future video, just because it is possible for me to get this in the beta. Explosive Blast, 45 arcane power with a 1 second cooldown. Interesting that it has the cooldown. It's a very, very high cost. Gather an infusion of energy around you that explodes after 2 seconds, causing 20 to 30 physical damage to any nearby enemies. Hydra, 70 arcane power, so this is going to be even more expensive than the previous one, but presumably your available arcane power is continuing to go up. Summon a multi-headed Hydra for 9 seconds that attacks enemies with bolts of fire, dealing 5 to 6 fire damage per attack. So, summon a multi-headed... Okay, for 9 seconds, so it does have a limit on the duration of it. Ray of Frost, project a beam of frozen ice that blasts 34 to 45 cold damage per second to the first enemy it hits, slowing the target's movement speed by 40% and attack speed by 30% for 5 seconds. So Ray of Frost is 29 arcane power per second. Let's go back up here. Disintegrate is 20 arcane power per second. But, now, here's what I don't know. Disintegrate may go through the target. It doesn't say anything about not going through the target, whereas Ray of Frost says pretty clearly to the first enemy it hits. So I'm not going to say anything about Disintegrate, like do I know that it goes through the target or not. I'm just assuming that because of the laser going through the guy's bones and continuing out the other side, but sometimes those icons aren't the most accurate. So here we go. So this is going to slow your target, and this would be very good, and it seems to me that this could be very, very good in a single target situation in particular. So maybe in a boss fight, something like that. Okay, Arcane Torrent, 20 arcane power per second. So there's another low cost one, just like the Disintegrate, relatively low cost. I mean, 20 arcane power you would quickly run out of if you were at the point that I'm at in the game. Hurl a barrage of arcane projectiles that deal 31 to 51 arcane damage per second to all enemies near the impact location. So you're picking a location as opposed to this where you're shooting out in a direction. And I'm not sure, this looks like it's going to be a line, not a cone. Arcane Torrent is you pick a location, and it's going to be basically the same thing. Meteor, 60 arcane power. Summon an immense meteor that plummets from the sky, causing 43 to 58 fire damage to all enemies it crashes into. The ground it hits is scorched with molten fire that does 12 to 17 fire damage over 3 seconds. Finally, Blizzard, cost 45 arcane power. Call down shards of ice to pelt an area, dealing 12 to 18 cold damage per second for 3 seconds. I don't know if Blizzard just loves keeping in spells named Blizzard, but this is essentially identical to every other Blizzard spell in every other game that they've ever made. So take it for what it is. Let's go ahead and move into Utility. Now, Utility is interesting because so far I've looked at shields. We also have another magic weapon here, which is another melee range thing, but let's go ahead and jump in. Frost Nova. An explosion of ice that freezes nearby enemies for 4 seconds and causes 6 to 12 cold damage. Okay, another one that I didn't use much because of the cooldown. I prefer the spammy abilities. I don't prefer the long cooldowns. Yes, I get that. It comes down to the toolkit. It all comes down to the toolkit. If I'm going through and I'm playing through in the beta and I'm just trying to get out and keep attacking mobs, and I only have 2 or 3 slots, as it were, you can get a 4th slot, but I haven't got the 4th slot yet in this playthrough. I don't want to put anything on a long cooldown, like 12 seconds to me is a long cooldown, because I can easily be in combat for in less than 12 seconds after I get in combat the first time. So I want to keep other abilities on my hotbar. That said, maybe that wasn't the best decision, because honestly, like I said, Electrocute, I wound up using it once I got it all of the time. And I started using the, Shock Pulse less frequently. So I could have made more use of it. However, our next ability, Ice Armor. 25 arcane power. Surround yourself in a barrier of ice that increases armor by 50% and causes 2 to 4 cold damage to melee attackers, chilling them for 2 seconds, lasts for 2 minutes. So Ice Armor is not actually the one that I demonstrated here. Let me go ahead and put this one on, though, and I should have done that right there. Let's go ahead. Ice Armor. Pretty cool animation on it. Ooh, and I keep spamming it. Okay, so pretty cool animation on it, but anyway, this is again goes a Spectral Blade, and it goes with our next ability, Magic Weapon. Imbue your weapon with magical energy, granting it 20% increased physical damage. Can only affect melee weapons. Lasts for 1 minute. So it kind of comes down to There is some melee playstyle which I am not familiar with, and I am not going to be able to tell you much about, but other people maybe in the comments here can. So there's something going on that makes a melee playstyle with a wizard viable, like a good thing to do. Okay, so the next ability, Magic Weapon, cost 8 arcane power. Imbue your weapon with magical energy, granting it 20% increased physical damage. Can only affect melee weapons, last for 1 minute. Again, just covered that. It's something, let's see if it has an animation to it that'll make it interesting. Oh, this skill requires a melee weapon. So let's open up our inventory. Do we happen to have any? We do, so let's go ahead and give that another try. It leaves little swirlies. If you're a girl, you like this. Okay. Diamond Skin. And Diamond Skin here is the ability that I just demonstrated. And the reason I demonstrate... Well, okay. Transform your skin into diamond for 5 seconds, absorbing up to 72 damage from incoming attacks. This is... Not only does it have a cool animation, if you're coming up across, like, the exploding guys, which is where I demonstrated it, the harvesters, etc., when you come up against them and they're about to explode, just pop this. Now, this does have a cooldown, but it blocks a lot of damage. Like, okay, it blocks about half of my health bar. So I have found it situationally very useful. I can justify this on my hotbar because it's the kind of ability you're not trying to spam anyway. It's the kind of ability that will save you when you know you're about to take that big hit. It's a good defensive cooldown to have. I like it a lot. It probably, aside from me finding it good as a solo adventure without a, you know, I'm not playing co-op here. Aside from me finding it helpful in this particular setup that I've got right now, it's probably another one of these things that plays into, you could potentially play a melee wizard. Okay, Storm Armor. 25 arcane power, bathe yourself in electrical energy, shocking ranged and melee attackers for 1 to 17 lightning damage, lasts for 2 minutes. Again, you know, there's another one where it's assuming that you are taking attacks, so take it for what it is. Mirror Image. Summon 2 illusionary duplicates of yourself that last for 15 seconds and have 25% of your life. The images may cast some of the same spells as you, but those spells deal no damage. So your illusions are not going to be dealing damage, but they are going to be confusing to your enemy. So, slow time, cooldown 30 seconds. Invoke a bubble of warp time and space for 10 seconds, slowing the movement and attack speed of enemies by 35%. This bubble also slows the movement of enemy projectiles by 90%. This means if you're getting shot, you've got range attackers, archers, anything like that, this bubble of warp time, anything that comes towards you, you're going to be able to easily dodge it. I mean, to a degree you already can, but this is going to make it just so much easier to do. Okay, so anyway, in addition to that, slowing the movement and attack speed of enemies by 35%. Now, it doesn't say anything about the range. Invoke a bubble of warped time and space for 10 seconds, slowing the movement. Okay, so what I don't know about slow time is whether it's a bubble around you or it's a bubble in a location, whether it's just location dependent. You drop it down somewhere. You can use it defensively, offensively. No idea. So is it like the Chronos bubble from League of Legends? Not League of Legends, Heroes of Newerth. Is it going to be like that or not? I don't know. Okay, so our next ability here is going to be Teleport. 15 arcane power, 16 seconds. Long cooldown, teleport through the ether to the selected location up to 35 yards away. So I'm not sure, the 35 yards away, I'm not sure the exact distance on that. I haven't gotten the distances down just like totally flawlessly here, but 35 yards seems like it should be pretty good. And this seems like also, it should be like the Barbarian Jump, the Furiously, I don't actually remember the name of it, and I haven't for quite a while here. But it seems like the Furious Leap, you can actually go over obstacles that, say, the Demon Hunter and the Monk cannot, and I mentioned this in each of those videos. So it seems like this, you should be able to go over obstacles as well, because you're just going to a selected location. If that selected location is valid, you'll appear there. I don't know that for sure, but that's my guess. Energy Armor. Focus your energies, increasing your defense by 20%, but lowering your maximum arcane power by 20%. Lasts for 2 minutes. Okay, this is an armor spell. Only one armor spell can be active at a time. So we've got a few armor spells, and I guess I didn't mention this. Ice Armor, Storm Armor, Energy Armor. Let's see, is there anything else? Diamond Skin, no. Okay, well anyway. Increasing your defense by 20%, but lowering your arcane power by 20%. Again, I don't know. I just don't know what this is. It's just... these things look like they're for a playstyle that I wasn't expecting out of the wizard and that I haven't tested out of the wizard. Okay, familiar, 20 arcane power. Summon a companion that will attack your targets for 2 to 4 arcane damage. This companion cannot be targeted or damaged by enemies. The pet lasts for 1 minute. Okay, so unlike other pets, this one will actually has a hard expiration date, 1 minute. And then on top of that, it can't be damaged. You can't lose it. So this is just going to be something where if you're using this, you want to make sure that you're refreshing it every minute. The 20 arcane power is pretty low, so hopefully that's going to be a pretty good addition. Okay, Archon, 25 arcane power, cooldown 2 minutes. Transform into a being of pure arcane energy for 15 seconds while in Archon form. Okay, while in Archon form, your normal abilities are replaced by powerful Archon abilities, and your armor and resistances are increased by 40%. Every enemy killed while in Archon form adds 1 second to the duration of Archon. Okay, so we become an Archon for 15 seconds, but every enemy I kill, I can keep that going longer and longer. That's going to be a big part of that playstyle. There's a 2-minute cooldown. Your armor and resistance are increased by 40%, so I'm not sure if this will also play into... You can play the melee wizard here. And finally, let's see... Your abilities are replaced by powerful Archon abilities, and your... So I don't know what that means. Like, if the abilities... Maybe it's like a pet bar, you summon a pet, except it replaces all of your abilities, or like a vehicle, if you get in a vehicle in World of Warcraft. So the Malagos encounter or something, the abilities, once you're on that Drake, are just the abilities of the dragon. I'm not sure what exactly the mechanic is, whether it's like all of your abilities or your rapid cast abilities will have different forms as an Archon, or whether you're actually getting a new skill set of abilities as an Archon that is unique to the Archon. I'm just not sure, but that's going to be a game-defining thing for probably a lot of wizards. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough of the wizard, the passive and active abilities. The active skills, just one quick thing. You only have 2 when you start. You get a third one, I believe, at level 9, possibly level 6. I'm not exactly sure when I got that third one, the third slot available to me. Then obviously 12, 18, and 24. By level 24, you have all 6 active skills available at a given time. Let's go ahead and try one thing. So we have Ice Armor, which is a buff for 2 minutes. Okay, so as we've seen with the Monk and as we've seen with the Barbarian, we cannot keep our buffs up if we switch the ability out. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so we switch that ability out and the buff does not stay active. It looked like very briefly when we were looking at the Demon Hunter, like the debuff marked for death did stay active even after we switched it out. And so I'm not exactly sure what the mechanics are here, but certainly these 2-minute buffs, 1-minute buffs from some of these classes, if you try to switch that out, and basically you can't play the system. You can't get a buff out and then switch the ability after you've buffed yourself to something else to your benefit, because the buff will immediately expire if you try to do that. So anyway, that's how this all works. I hope you enjoyed this little look at the wizard. The wizard is a lot of fun to play. I might do a little bit more on this, but after this I'm going to go into a couple different types of videos. I believe at this point I've covered the playthroughs for each of the classes and the abilities and the passive and active skills for each of the classes. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.